Hi everybody, it's me Willow and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a movie review for all of you and it's the new film called Good Boy from director Ben Leonberg, and it stars his real life dog Indy in the protagonist role. I've been hearing about this film for quite a few months now. It came out at a film festival before the summertime and it got great reviews out of that film festival. So I've definitely been, anticipating its release over the last couple months. And I thought I was going to have to drive like outside of my city to be able to see it, but my local cinema was playing it. So I went this weekend. I went to the matinee right after I saw The Smashing Machine. Actually, the timing was so perfect. It ended maybe 20 minutes before Good Boy, so I was able to run to my car and just sit in it for a couple minutes, decompress after The Smashing Machine, and then head straight into Good Boy. And Good Boy is so much fun because it's under 90 minutes and it's from the sole perspective of the dog Indy. So very interesting and like original horror film. So I really did enjoy having this like dog performance, as Hollywood was built on animal performers, specifically dog performers in the silent era, and animal performances have always been vital to a lot of film productions. Specifically, you can think of like Ben-Hur and the horses that were used in that performance, and you can think of like Air Buddies. I can think of growing up and the dogs that you used on that, or Anatomy of the Fall and the dog that we used in that film. Like a lot of the time, we don't realize how important the animal performances are in movies. So I love that this film kind of like highlights the dog's performance. And after the film, there's actually a little end credit like thank you from Ben and Indy, and they discuss how this is all an independent film. I believe Shudder bought it after it was made at one of the film festivals, so it's going to be on their streaming service. So that's great. If you don't get a chance to see Good Boy in theaters, it will be going on Shudder's service like later, hopefully before the end of the year. But by being an independent film, it was just Ben, his wife, and maybe one or two other people, and Indy at their home filming this for maybe 1 to 2 hours a day over the course of 3 years. So, very impressive the results that they were able to get from this film after, you know, having such a small production, not a big budget, just filming at their house with their real life dog. And obviously, you can train your dog only so much. Like, it's not always going to give you the reaction that you need that you wrote in the script. So I just think it's really fascinating being able to see that behind the scenes look and get to see Ben and his wife and the rest of the crew interact with Indy on the set. And of course, Indy has no idea that she's making a movie with them. She thinks they're just like playing and making like duck sounds at her, but really they're trying to get that right emote, you know, and I really thought it was great how Ben mentioned using the cool shove method with Indy, and how that was how they were able to effectively make Indy look so emotive at certain moments. They just grabbed a whole bunch of footage of Indy making certain emotions. Maybe it was just her blank face, but juxtaposing her face with whatever like spooky aura is in the corner has us, the audience, believing that she's actually scared, even though she's obviously not scared in real life. There's like quacking noises being done behind the camera to get her to emote in a certain way. So I thought that was fantastic, having that behind the scenes, getting to learn that they use the Kuleshov method to be able to approach these certain scenes that they scripted in the editing process. So love that. Thought it was so great. I do think this film is interesting. I don't know if it fully works. I wouldn't say this is like a 4 or a 5 star on Letterboxd. I would say more of like a 3, 3.5. It is great. The ambition that this film has from a filmmaker perspective, also an audience perspective, like we don't ever really get to focus on the main, like the dog's owner's face. He's not the main character, so we always just focus on Indy, and we like focus in on her and her perspective from her level. So very, very interesting approach. Like obviously you don't see films like this every day. So I think that is extremely unique and a great way to try and approach the narrative structure. So I do think that has like a little bit of cons though, just because it is difficult going back and forth between knowing what you know as the audience member looking at Indy. Like obviously she sees this spirit that is lingering in the house, and her owner is just getting sicker and sicker, and you're just upset at this owner, and you're like, come on, listen to your dog. So definitely I think is very effective. But if the movie was like any longer past the 80-minute mark, like I think it would have been starting to get a little difficult to watch, just because like a lot of the scenes are just the dog looking at like random darkness in the corner for about the first 40 minutes, and then like the more horror possession stuff comes in at the end. So I would say that would be my one big critique, was that there was a lot of build up and like trying to set the idea that this house is haunted through like scary moments, but they don't actually like fully come through. Like all the scary moments are more just like, oh, it's actually the neighbor in the background, not a monster. Or, oh, we're looking at this dark corner, but then we shine the light on it and there's nothing there. It doesn't really give in to like the actual horror nature, the possession, until really like the last half an hour, I would say. Last 20 minutes is when it really gets into the horror film. So I thought this was going to deal a little bit more with possession, and it didn't. So I was a little disappointed with that. I thought it would be a little bit more scarier. If anything, it was more anxiety inducing for me, because I was worried this dog kept getting locked out of the house and like its owner was sick. So I'm like, this dog is going to be left all by itself. So I was like worried for the dog, even though I had to keep telling myself, this is a movie, Willow, like it's not real, the dog is fine. So I would have added a little bit more of the horror possession elements into it rather than the eye playing like tricks on you. So I wish it was dived a bit deeper into like the lore, or more like gore or surrealism. Like I know that they're on a limited budget, so some of the effects are quite limited. Like they're on a limited budget, so the effects aren't like fantastic, if I'm being honest. Like there's one scene where the dog like jumps through like a window, and that CGI glass was, I had to chuckle a little bit. And then when we get into like the possession later in the movie, there's like scenes that I wouldn't say the VFX were like 100% on that either. And I think a lot of like the dark orb scenes looked like a man in a morph suit. So definitely some criticisms for me. But you know, being such a small project and working with like an animal as the main character, I'm willing to like let those gripes go and just like enjoy it at face level, because I do think this is such a fun and original film. I would highly suggest like people go out and see it in the theaters, support it, because it is like a smaller film. I do really like how they were able to use like the weather to make the film feel more eerie. It's often set in like the rain at nighttime, giving an even more like creepy feeling, and like the lightning and the thunder play with like the windows in certain scenes where we're looking into like the darkness, and then the lightning will like brighten the room for a moment. So I really like how they were able to use those more practical effects. They had like a little like rain hose that they showed in the behind the scenes footage to get the rain, and I think they had like certain lights to be able to make like the footage, but I think that was very effective. I also really liked the sound design in this film, a lot of like the creakiness of like the floorboards, hearing the footsteps, and then one of the visual effects that I really did like was the muddy footsteps of the spirit, seeing those at different moments. I thought that was great too. We would see those like in the light and the dark, and then when they're creaking on the floorboards, sometimes the muddy footprints would appear. So I thought that was great. I really did like, obviously, the thunder and the lightning sounded really great and would add to the anxiety. I think the coughing, because our main character is very sick, I thought that was anxiety inducing as well. We're already worried about the dog and the owner, and now the owner's sick, adding on top of everything, being worried about these characters. I think the different emotes that we get from the dogs, like verbally, were perfect. There's two dogs in the film, like this ghost dog and then Ivy, and we have them barking like at two different times, and they're very distinct, and you can tell which dog is what. And like when the ghost dog is around, like that lingering like barking and making you worried, like what happened to this dog, and then you find out what happens to that poor dog. And I also Indy and all of the different like whines and barks that she has. I really think near the end of the film she gives some really like just emotional, like heart-wrenching cries and whimpers, and you feel so bad for her. She just wants to protect her owner. She wants to be there by his side, like he says. Like he complains about that at the beginning of the film, that she's always by his side and never leaves him alone, and it's because she can see everything that's going on in this crazy, wacky house, and she just wants to protect him and make sure that he's safe, and he's tying her out in the doghouse. So, very, very interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a film like this before. The different uses of the dog actor, the human actor, the visual and practical effects all combined together become such a fascinating film. I'm definitely so happy I was able to go see this at my local theater and that they were playing it. Like I said, I would definitely suggest you guys go out and see it if you guys have the chance to see it. I think it's a great October Halloween film because it is, even though, like I said, I wish they would have given us a little bit more of the horror possession elements. We do get like one or two scenes near the end that are kind of like scary. I would say this is more like jump scares in this film, if anything. I think you can probably handle it. Nothing bad happens to Indy, but there is some visual stuff for like dog death, and like I don't want to spoil it too much for you guys, but if you are like an animal lover, this will be a little bit of a difficult watch just because you are so worried about Indy. Nothing bad happens to Indy necessarily. She survives to the end, but there are some other animal stuff that I think will make you guys a little bit upset. I know I was a little bit upset. Like I wish I kind of looked up some of it just because it was hard to watch, but I am more sympathetic and empathetic for animals. So maybe if you're just like a casual animal person, you'll be fine. But I think if you have a dog at home, this one's going to be a difficult watch. But just know she survives to the end. So you're not going to see any dog death from the main dog. But just be warned about some other animal stuff being involved in the film, so you might want to go in with just a little bit of precautions if you're worried about animals, but nothing too bad. I was able to watch it, I was able to handle it, but I definitely feel very sad at the end of the film. Like, it's a sad film, sad horror film, so be prepared, guys, be prepared. But definitely would suggest going to see it for October or Halloween. It's a perfect film. You can go with your friends. Definitely something different, a nice quick watch. But I had a fun time. I'm glad I went and saw it. I want to support small independent films, so I'm glad I was able to go and see it at my small family owned theater as well. So I was able to get both of those done, support a small indie film and support a small indie theater at the same time. So love doing that. But if you guys have had a chance to see Good Boy, let me know in the comments what you thought of the film. Did you like the elements of horror, or do you think similarly to me and wish they added a bit more to it? Overall, what did you think of Indy as the main character? I thought she was just so sweet and such a tenacious dog, honestly. It would be great to see her in the future in some other projects. So make sure you leave me a comment down below, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the review, and if you like these film reviews, give me a subscribe and hit the notification button. I'm trying to post multiple times a week with some film content and other pop culture awards information, so make sure you hit that notification button so you don't miss out on any more content that I am bringing your way. So yeah, I'll see you guys very soon in my next video. Thanks so much for all the support. Bye.